Add 3 zeros to that, and it becomes the exact dimension of the volume of a hypercube. 1296000. That's also the number of seconds in a compass, exactly. The number of minutes in the compass is 21,600, also relating to the moon. And that happens to also be the nautical mile measurement of the circumference of Earth. It's all a little too perfect. Because consciousness made it. And we have just simply been, it would make no sense to put yourself into a simulation environment or game that was going to be one where you were omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. Because I'm going to play poker with you. Is that a fun game? I don't think so. I know the hand you're going to be dealt. You know the hand I'm going to be dealt. It's like, okay, let's start over again. We already did it. This is a waste. Instead, you would build a game where you would dimensionally limit your avatar. And then make your avatar find certain aspects of himself or herself to then reactivate those things. This is the best part of a superhero movie, right? The best part of the superhero movie is when the superhero starts to realize, wait, I think I'm a superhero. I got bitten by the spider, and now I can climb on walls. What else can I do? That's the stage humanity's in right now as we move to the next octave of silicon and 24-strand DNA. 24, the knowledge of 24, the prime number pattern, which I published at Cornell on Oxford in 2019. First time I published it in 2018. Is exactly that. The knowledge of 24ness and the divine aspect of it is the return of the Kai, or the Shin, in Yeshua. You know, I'll show you one last thing, just to be interesting to you guys.
And then do we have a few minutes with you for questions, or I know
Sure.
that you're trying to make it
Absolutely. We've got questions. I don't have to go anywhere. Totally fine. So I'll show you something. So you guys probably all know this name, Yahweh, right?
Right.
Okay. So what if I told you that's also a math equation? How do you write Yahweh?
Okay.
Look familiar? Hebrew. Yod He Vav He. I am that I am. We make our personalities, our personas, based on deciding what we are not. It's like what I teach at Northwestern Business School and have done for the last 8 years. I teach sandbox analysis, which is you start by determining what you're not going to be when you make a strategy. And then you sort of narrow it down from there. It's the easiest way to do it. I'm not going to be a sound bull, I'm not going to do sound healing. So that's not part of my strategy. But I might do something else. And I still keep that in the parking lot. All the things that I might still be. And then I whittle that down and figure out, okay, what's my ikigai? The ikigai is the overlap, the Venn diagram of the things that I'm good at, the things that get valued by the world, the things that I can make money at, right? And the things I love to do. That's the ikigai. So you can do that in strategy. But we do it with our personalities based on when we feel feelings of shame, guilt. We then determine, I am not that. I am not. And so the first thing we do is we judge it and everyone else around us because we try to get it out of us, and then it pops up in the world around us. And whatever we judge, it will be what we attract. We attract everything we judge until we no longer judge everything we attracted. And what you've been doing is that aspect of yourself is trying to reveal itself back to you to be healed, so that you don't get triggered by it. This is why people that are the most arrogant are the ones who call out other people for being arrogant. They can't see the mote in their own eye. And they all are fighting for this whole ideal of like, oh, I'm going to go to heaven, not hell. I'm going to be better than someone else. It's not even necessary. That's just more egoic separation. But they're just at a different stage of their path. Everyone eventually will ascend. There's not a single person that won't, even Hitler. Every single one. He was just at the maximum stage of his narcissism. The belief that he has no darkness within. Villains always believe themselves to be heroes. It's the nature of life. So what is this mathematically? Pi to the 7th power equals what? 3020. Pi times 7 equals 22. A mirror in between the two. What does this equal? 1 over 137.
Wow.
Okay, next question.
We have one question up here, and then we'll take our last two questions, and then we will need to wrap it up because we do have an evening event. So I want to be mindful. I know we could continue the conversation. If you all could see the book of notes these three ladies are churning out on this table, you would be shocked.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I had this question before getting here. I wanted to ask you. You just mentioned it a few minutes ago.
Yeah, here you go.
Go ahead.
Speak in the microphone. You have it on.
It's
just-
on, it's
you'll
on.
just speak into it, yes.
Okay. You mentioned it a
the
few minutes ago. Will you explain to me the fourth dimension?
fourth dimension, okay.
Yes.
So the best way I could describe it is like this.
Yes.
Okay, so the first dimension is a line. How do we measure that? Line segment. In length, right? We measure it in length. And we have to ascribe some sort of unit of measure to it. Okay. Then the next dimension, so this is the first dimension. So now we're going to move to the second dimension. And we have a line going this way, which is x-axis. This is both x-axis. We now have a y-axis. Right? And now how do we measure that? The measurement for this is area. X times y.
We can't see you.
X times y. So x, length, so it's going to have a certain number of length here, right? And then same thing here. So x times y measured in area. And then we take that to squared. Right, so that becomes second dimension. So then the third dimension is what? So x-axis, y-axis, still there. Now we're going to take a z-axis. And the z-axis gives us depth. So the z-axis, and there's a certain degree, once you mark this right around 72 degrees, it will actually look like it's three-dimensional. Because there is perspective math that can, all the higher dimensions are compressed within the lower dimensions. So for example, if I take a cube and I have a shadow cast on that cube on the floor, what shadow will it cast? It'll cast the shadow of a hexagon. The hexagon has all the information in it in the second dimension of all the higher dimensions of that hexagon, which include the cube and the hypercube and everything else. All the information's there. So then we have a z-axis here, right? So the way we measure that, now we've got, right, like a cube. So we take this, like this, like this. See now? Got a cube. See that? So the cube is measured how? How do we measure that? It's in volume, right? And you just take one side of a cube and then take that to the third power. That's where the third power comes from. So that's the third dimension. You follow me so far? So imagine now I have a photograph. What would a photograph be? A flat photograph would be what? Second dimension, right? Second dimension. So now I pop it out so that it's actually got depth associated with it. Third dimension. Now the fourth dimension right, is now going to give us axis points that are going to be along this, right? That's going to basically be another offset and another offset. And this fourth dimension is going to give us motion. Motion is the fourth dimension. So I've got a stationary photograph. The photograph now has depth, so it's 3D, but it's still stationary. And then as soon as I put that in motion, I'm in the fourth dimension. And how do we measure motion? Time.
Man-made concept.
No, it's not. There's nothing that's a man-made concept. Everything is consciousness. There's not a single thing that exists. Even our measurement systems, the things that we think are meter, foot, cubit, all this stuff that are arbitrary measures that somebody chose, no, they're not. I'll give you an example. I do a lot of work in Egypt. The radius of a circle with 1 meter as its radius. when you split it into 12 parts for time, like 12 hours for the male cycle of the day and 12 hours for the female cycle of the day, it's going to be pi over 6, right? So that's going to give us a 30-degree arc right here. The space to traverse this arc with 1 meter, exactly 1 meter, which is 3.28084 feet, exactly, equals 1 meter, which, by the way, the meter was only supposed to be created in 1799. How is it then that the Great Pyramid is the exact location of the speed of light in meters per second? So its apex is 29.9792458 degrees north and 31.1342 degrees east. Guess what that is? That's exactly the speed of light in meters per second, 299,792,458 meters per second. How is that possible? We didn't even have longitude and latitude measurements when the pyramid was built. Unless it's built in the future. That's also simultaneously the past. So when you look at this, you're like, wait, how could that be? Well, then you could say, okay, that's the latitude, but what about the longitude? The longitude is actually equal to 31 degrees, 8 minutes, and 3 seconds. Which, you might recognize that number. Anyone recognize 3183?
No.
It's 1 over pi. And that's exactly what that measurement is. And if I take that and divide it by 360 degrees, it comes out to 0.0864, which is the number of seconds in a day, 86,400 seconds in a day. So one axis, and by the way, what does the name pyramid even mean? It means fire in the middle.
Yeah.
Fire was synonymous with light. Middle could be synonymous with the midpoint or the mean. The mean value for light, fire in the middle, and it just happens to be exactly the speed of light, and the other axis is time. If I take a pendulum and I swing this, and this is actually, this 30-degree arc is 1.718 feet, which is equal exactly to the Royal Egyptian cubit. And it takes exactly 1 second for a pendulum to swing both directions 1 second, which then happens 86,400 times in 1 day. So we have unity of all the measurement systems, ancient, modern, and then the number of feet that's inside of this. So if we're going to figure out using 3.28084 feet, right, for the meter, for this radius, and then we multiply that, this comes out to be 20.616 feet, which is exactly the number of inches in a Royal Egyptian cubit. So now we've got feet measurement equilibrated. So we've got foot, cubit, and meter all in one circle with one radius value of 1 and time. So all 4-dimension measurement systems are embedded in this one simple circle of radius of 1 meter. You think mankind created that? Maybe yes, when you look at it in the context of the higher self. Final question.
Well, so here's my dilemma. So we're already past 5 o'clock, and I really do need to honor the people who are setting up your next event. So here is my thought for us here. I think it's important for me to go ahead and make some announcements so that I know some of you actually do need to physically move. I know some of you have a lot more questions.